Good Monday afternoon, folks. It's Brooke McGowan. I'm normally here with Rhonda Villamont-Smith, and we do Sugar and Spice every once in a while from the bunker here at OTU Media. Today I'm just by myself. Well, of course, I have my favorite liberal, Frosty.
Oh.
You're popping me in the face.
Behind camera.
So Frosty and I today have a little bit of news to come your way. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope you enjoyed the state fair. Oklahoma State Fair closed out yesterday. I finally made it on the last day. I didn't want to go. I didn't feel good, but my husband dragged me out there, and I'm so glad we got to go out there and see the Shriners, clowns, and of course the awesome buildings and all of the great exhibits. And the JFK exhibition was there. That is pretty awesome. If you missed it, you should see it next time, and look for it also in Washington, D.C. There's a few things we want to talk about before I bring Dan Fisher on, former candidate for governor in Oklahoma, and also former House Representative Dan Fisher will be joining us soon. He's a friend, and he's got a lot to talk about, and we want to talk with him too about what's been happening in the state and in the nation at large. But first, I want to remind you that today is September 24th, and if you haven't already registered to vote, your deadline is approaching. I hope you're all voters. I hope you're all civically engaged. I hope you're precinct captains. I hope you're planning on being county delegates and state delegates to the convention this year. I hope you're involved. I hope you're digging in and you're entrenching yourselves, because that's the only way we're going to make a change in this state, is if conservative grassroots care. And if conservative grassroots do care and organize, which is what we're trying to do here at Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, then we can see a shift in the future. Now, we know what's been happening this year with the pretty much the systematic downfall of all of the platform caucus conservative Christians from the House. Basically, that's what it looks like to us. There are some stalwarts that remain. I promise you, there's still people that are Christians that are going to be at 23rd and Lincoln, but those that have been really the remnant have been removed. So, it's been quite a year. So, October 12th is your deadline if you need to register to vote for the November 6th. And we have the link for you right here. It's elections.ok.gov. There was a historic turnout this year, as you know. We have a historic turnout for 2018. I think a lot of it had to do, obviously, with the 788 question anomaly. But let's keep that momentum going. Let's get out the vote this fall. Let's get out the vote in November. So many things hinge on that. We've got to be registered. We've got to vote. We need the Republicans, regardless whether or not you think they're rhinos or not. We need to vote for them, because we need to have one goal in mind, and that is protecting President Trump, protecting the integrity of our nation, protecting him. That's what he needs. We know that if the Democrats take over the House, then they will gum up the works for a long time. Not only will they charge on to impeach Donald Trump, whether they're going to use some kind of crazy something, kind of like what they're doing with Kavanaugh, but they will also be interested in not allowing tax cuts 2.0. And if you recall, tax cuts 1.0 last year affected everybody and has helped every state, has helped everybody in the country, not just the 1%, regardless of what the left wants to tell you, but everybody's been affected. Everybody's been making more money. We can see that unemployment is at record lows. Our GDP is 4.2%, historic, a historic rise. Unemployment for the Black community, for women, for the Hispanic community are all at record lows. The country is on an upswing, so let's keep that momentum going. Be sure to vote on November 6th. But if you need to register, please go to that link and register by October 12th. Okay, so, another thing, you can pick up your registration if you don't want to go online. You can pick it up at any local library, at the county election board, at any post office, or at any of the multiple tag agencies that you see as you're driving down the road. So because we're asking about who's going to be voting and who's going to be supporting the Republicans this fall, and your president is asking for you to be sure to go vote and protect him, GOP.com has a campaign out there that's saying, sign your pledge, meaning pledging to vote. Are you going to vote this year in the fall?
Absolutely.
Oh, very good. So you can go to GOP.com and sign that pledge. You'll be signed up on a website that will send you out notifications for reminders, also for what's going on in your area. But you can be any party member and go to this and let them know that you do plan to vote. That's a pretty cool campaign. One thing I want to do is I want to thank, that Hurricane Florence just hit North Carolina a week and a half ago, actually, last weekend first. And it's still happening. It's still, the rivers are cresting and people are, I think I saw somewhere where it's like 44 people now have died, Frosty.
Yeah, dude, it was huge.
It was amazing. It's horrible. North Carolina has really, and that's one of my home states. Obviously, I'm from Oklahoma, but I lived in North Carolina for over 9 years, and our daughter is still there, where she's making her life with her new husband. They had their 1-year anniversary yesterday.
Oh, good for them.
It's pretty cool. But the Oklahoma Swift Water Rescue Team just returned from North Carolina. We want to say thank you. Thank you for going out there for an 11-day deployment and putting your lives on the line for our friends and neighbors in North Carolina. So thank you. I don't know if you guys have heard of him much, but I talk about him a little bit here and there. I listen to my buddy Dan Bongino and the Dan Bongino Show. So he does a podcast pretty much every day. 5 days a week. And of course, he's on Fox a lot. And I first met Dan in 2012 at CPAC, where he sat down in my seat and I got to interview him. That was pretty neat for Tea Party News Network. And I got to know him then and found out we had some connectivity in the past. He was a Secret Service agent. My ex-husband flew the president. There was some connection there. So we got to be friends, and he's a wonderful guy. He's an incredible patriot. He's a neat father and a really awesome husband. But more than that, he's also giving you the news before anybody else is. And I want to encourage you to go to danbongino.com and sign up for his daily podcast. If you're just driving down the road, or if you've got time while you're putting on your makeup or doing your dishes or whatever, you should be listening to Dan. First, you should be listening to Todd Tucker. And second to Todd Tucker, you should be listening to Dan Bongino. How'd you like that plug?
There you go. I dig it.
Yep, that was good. So one of the things Dan was talking about today is what he says. Regarding Kavanaugh, you are about to witness crazy town this week. This week is going to be crazy stuff happening from the radical left. And also, Q has been saying this. I know you're not following Q and you're all confused about it. We'll go over that someday when I'll get a whiteboard and I'll draw out a bunch of, I'll connect the dots for you.
I'm just saying, I understand Q. He's just an old school 4chan nerd who happens to have a little bit of info. So he's just going and goofing off stuff here and there.
Sure. He's just a big goof off. But future proofs past.
He's just an old 4chan nerd, man. That's all it is.
So the second hit job came today on Kavanaugh. Well, actually, it came yesterday. Now we're hearing about it more today, and that was the Deborah Ramirez accusation, where she was a college colleague, I guess, or student with him in college at Yale, and she's making the claim that he exposed himself to her. So, of course, there's no way to corroborate this. But let me tell you something. The left, not just Democrats, because I've got friends that are Democrats. One's sitting right here in the room. The crazy left, okay, those that have left the reservation, those who have walked away from common sense, they are pulling out every stop. We saw Christine Blasey Ford, I'm sorry, that's what Rush calls her, Christine Blasey Ford with her accusation last week, so they delayed the vote. Well, that was the first battle that they just won because they delayed it all the way to Thursday. And I'm just reiterating to you what I've learned from Dan today. So you can go and hear it firsthand from him. He's hearing from sources, and I don't have those firsthand sources, but he does. So this is secondhand source. They are absolutely in unprecedented attack mode. They have to stop this at any cost, by any means necessary. Last week, and this is just me talking, last week we made the prediction that Christine Blasey Ford wouldn't work. It wouldn't be enough. So they'd have to come up with another. And first she was saying she didn't want to come to D.C. because she didn't like to fly. Okay, so then she's got to drive, right? So then it's going to be a few more days. And so they delayed the vote. Grassley has delayed the vote. And he's delayed the vote simply because he doesn't have the vote. We have 4 Republican holdouts. Looks like Jeff Flake from Arizona, Susan Collins from Maine, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, and Nelson. I can't remember if he's Bill or Bob.
Probably Bill.
Bill Nelson, thank you, Dan, from Florida. Those look like the last holdouts. You guys need to pay attention this week. Watch what's happening. Pray for the committee. Pray for Brett Kavanaugh. Pray for your president. And we're going to take a quick time out.
you have problems with pain, anxiety, or sleeplessness? Come see us at Can Help Wellness, where we can help. Stop by any of our 4 wellness centers to find out how premium CBD products can help you find relief. From balms to tinctures to even products for your pets. Natural, safe, organic relief and lab tested with certifications. Reach out to one of our wellness consultants today at 405-455-3012 or online at cann-help.com.
Wow. Well, thank you for your patience and waiting for us during that break. I want to welcome my good friend Dan Fisher. Dan, thank you.
How's this for casual?
Hey, I got
How's
it
this?
too. Look, it was either a hat day or it was either going to be hat or makeup.
Yeah.
Because I decided I couldn't do hair and
So you
makeup.
decided on no makeup.
Ah, he gotcha.
If I don't wear makeup, I look like a zombie. You know it when I haven't worn. Right, Frosty? You've seen me walking in here when hair and
I
makeup
didn't see you earlier without your makeup. It was
Hey,
different. I
now
wasn't gonna say nothing.
Frosty's wearing makeup.
He does?
He looks good.
I like
Oh,
that
you
guy
look
too,
fantastic.
that beard he's got going.
Yeah.
Dan, tell
Yes.
me about your life since June 26th. Now, let me just preface real quickly. Dan came in 4th in the huge field of Republican, really too many
Yeah, probably so.
too many Republican candidates. 10.
Yeah, there were 10 of us.
We had 10 this time around, and Dan came in 4th, which is really great. Not good enough,
No.
but really great. Let's talk about
But
that.
I'll tell you, when you think about the fact that we spent about $300,000 and the 3 in front of me spent over $12 million.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
for what we had and that we were a true grassroots campaign, I think we did phenomenally well. Now, like you're saying, I didn't enter the race to be 4th.
Yeah, of course.
But, you know, you take a message and you spread it as hard and as far as you can, and you see. We did one internal poll, and now we told the pollster, hey, we want the skinny on this. Don't give us a bunch of inflated numbers. And they told us that 80% of the people who heard our message embraced it immediately and became supporters.
I don't
Which,
know.
well, it's kind of unheard of
Right,
in
it
the
is.
political
But
arena.
your message was different.
It was. The problem was we couldn't get it to enough people. We just couldn't.
I know.
And we did the
And that
best we
takes
could.
money.
It takes tons
And
of it.
grassroots money, as you know, is difficult to drum.
It trickles.
It does.
Well, it trickles in. Yeah. And because there were so many candidates, there was a lot of fundraising going on. And of course, the establishment crowd was never going to support me. We both know that. So anyway,
Full
here we are.
disclosure, I did support Dan. My
Yes,
husband and I
she did.
support Dan Fisher
They
for
did.
governor,
They did
and
indeed.
we love you as a friend. We love
Well,
you as a
thank
leader
you.
in the state. We think
Thank
that your
you.
message is one that needs to be heard a lot. So
Well, the deal was, you know, being governor was never on my bucket list. That was not why I was running. In fact, I had to kind of be convinced to run, just to be honest with you.
Sure.
I had no intentions of doing anything more like that politically. But it was obvious that no one was going to promote that message. No
Right.
one was going
So
to.
let's talk about that message.
Let's do that.
Shall
Let's
we?
do that.
'Cause
Let's
I
do
love
it.
that message.
Yeah, how about that?
I'm a longtime pro-life abolitionist, as you know. After I graduated from seminary, I became
Yes.
the director for Center for Bioethical Reform for both Carolinas, North and South
Man,
Carolina.
that sounds important.
It was. It's very important work
Yeah.
because what we're doing is we're taking the message because we have to win hearts and minds.
Yes, we do.
We don't win
Yes, we
just
do.
at the legislation.
No, we
right?
don't.
We can't win just because we cram it down people's throats.
No,
we
that's
win
right.
this message by the hearts and minds of young
That's
men
exactly
and young
right.
women
That's exactly
who are
right.
impacted by what the truth of
Yep.
abortion is.
Yep, that's right. That's
And
right.
that's what we did across campuses all across the Southeast
Yeah.
region and even in town markets.
Sure.
And what we did was controversial, Dan, because
Oh, of
as
course.
you know, well, more than just being pro-life, we were also showing graphic images. And that
Yeah.
part, Christians have a problem with.
Yeah, I know.
Christians are upset when they
Yeah.
see the graphic images, but as I've said all along, you know, it's the memory in your brain. It's something that tricks your brain. When
Yep.
you see the image, you always remember the image,
Yeah.
not just the words about what it means to have a D&E
Mm-hmm.
or what it means to rip a baby apart in a mother's womb, but what the image actually looks
Yeah.
like. So it was controversial, but I'll never. I don't have any
Yeah.
apologies or regrets
No, of
for
course
that.
not.
But in Oklahoma, we have to. We've got to realize what
Yeah.
the real battle is.
Well, you know, one of the things that I was pounding hard was that abortion is murder. There's no way to define it as anything else. Unfortunately, though, it happens in nondescript buildings. People don't see it happen. There's no crime tape. There's no outline of the body on the floor. There's no investigation. There's nothing. So people, it's sterilized in their minds, and it doesn't happen to them much.
Right.
And so they just don't think about it. So when someone like you comes along, or someone like me, and we confront them with the reality, you show them pictures, well, they're offended by that.
Totally.
Well, I'm telling you why primarily they're offended. Because it forces them to have to deal with it.
A decision.
Yeah. See, right now they're able to just tuck it away. Well, I'm not going to have an abortion, and my kids aren't going to have an abortion, and I've never seen an abortion. So they get to tuck it away. But when someone like you confronts them with it, with pictures, or I tell them, hey, abortion's murder, and we ought to treat it like murder. And the reason why we don't call it murder is because if we did, we'd be forced then to deal with it like murder.
Right.
So I was running on an abolitionist platform, obviously, but honestly, I can't say more important in my platform, because if we can't get the issue of life right, does it really matter what else we get right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that if we had the best economy in all 50 states, but we were murdering babies every business day at the rate of 20, would it really matter? Yeah, I recall Jesus saying, if you gain the whole world but lose your soul, what will you profit? Yeah, but I was also running on state sovereignty, asserting state sovereignty, because you're never going to solve the abortion question if states believe that they're beholden to the federal government, and specifically the Supreme Court.
Yeah, nine men in robes.
Yeah, and and it turns out to be 5.
Yeah.
Because all of these decisions are 5-4 decisions, pretty much.
Now, Roe Wade was 7-2.
No, I know.
Yeah,
but now,
right.
in essence, we're ruled by 5 justices, because all it takes is 5.
Right.
Now, many of the decisions have been 7-2, even 8-1, but it only takes 5.
Yeah.
So the idea that we're governed by 9 is really even a misnomer. It's by 5.
Right, which all is not true, because we have misbalanced the 3 branches of government.
Oh, it's ridiculous. What we now have in people's minds today would cause the framers to turn over in their graves. Well, because they envisioned 3 co-equal branches.
Right.
So they never, the Supreme Court was only called the Supreme Court because it was supposed to be the highest court in the land. It wasn't intended to be the highest branch of the 3.
Exactly. And to seep down into every state.
No, exactly. In fact, the Supreme Court was actually originally created to try cases that none of the other courts could, like, for instance, between states.
Yeah.
Between a state and the federal government,
right.
Between a person and the federal government, foreign questions and disputes. It was never, the Supreme Court was never envisioned originally to be deciding what is and is not constitutional, all the way down to how do you define marriage.
Yeah.
See, that was that was never the plan.
Right.
So I ran on those, and of course, running on small government, actually believing in small government. That's what we were.
That's not popular.
It's certainly not popular.
Here.
Not among the establishment. No. No. So anyway, that got me into a lot of trouble.
All kinds of noise. Well, it got you. Maybe it got you into trouble, but you will never stand before God and be ashamed of your campaign or about the workers in your campaign.
No, you're right.
So I mean,
people have asked me, do I regret anything? No, I really don't. I mean, you always look back with 20/20 hindsight, and you say, well, if we'd have tweaked this, maybe we'd have, done a little better. But overall, Brooke, I think with what we had, and when I say that, I mean basically resources. I know. We had a great team.
Yes.
We couldn't have had a better team. With who we had and what we had to work with as far as resources, I think we did as much as we could do. Mm-hmm. What is so regrettable, though, and this is the part for those who are professed Christians, is that the church did not show up. And I was really hoping that the church would, because this was territory that the church has claimed to own for decades. So we talk the talk, abortion's bad, we ought to end it. But then finally a candidate runs who says, if I'm elected governor, I will abolish abortion in Oklahoma or die trying. Yeah. And the church just gives out a collective yawn. And basically says we're out.
Yeah.
So I really think my defeat, if you want to call it defeat, because you came in fourth, so you obviously were defeated. is really a referendum on the church in Oklahoma. Because you got to remember, in 3.9 million citizens in Oklahoma, 1.3 million claim to be evangelical. So
Right.
it's a big number.
Well, Dan, you may remember that a couple of years ago there was a movie filmed in Oklahoma called the Gosnell movie.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
all about Dr. Kermit Gosnell from
yeah.
Pennsylvania, out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And so I was actually in the movie, and I have friends
Oh.
that, right? I know, cool,
So
right?
I need you to
just
sign-
an extra. No, I was
You
just
signed my keychain.
So last week we had the premiere of Gosnell for Oklahoma City on
Yeah.
Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And then on Thursday we had the Dallas premiere, and I got to go to that. But I want to show you the trailer first
Ooh.
from the movie, and then I want to talk a little bit about why Gosnell is the most important story that we're not hearing about.
Oh, okay, great. Sounds good.
All right, listen up. We are looking for anything that looks like drugs or paraphernalia.
Philadelphia Police Department, we have a search warrant.
What is that smell?
Man, you gotta see this. Is this normal?
I don't know. I've never been in an abortion clinic before.
You are not gonna believe what I saw last night.
How many?
So far, we found over 30 of them. Healthy woman goes into a clinic, comes out dead, and there's no police report?
Files have been moved recently.
Look at this.
You'll be the prosecutor who went after reproductive rights, and you'll be a racist to boot.
You've got a lot of folk who'd like to see abortion outlawed. And this is not going to be the case that gives them an excuse.
Prosecution has offered you a plea bargain, Dr. Gosnell.
Then I would have to admit I was guilty. I'm not guilty.
When you get to the courthouse, you are going to be swarmed by reporters.
You ready for this, counselor?
Where's everybody?
When was the last time your division inspected Dr. Gosnell's clinic?
We had instructions directly from Governor Ridge's office not to inspect.
Wouldn't testify in that case about anything. You doubt you'll find a doctor who will.
And you look at the facts, you will see what I see.
An overly zealous Catholic investigator.
Is that what you want to make this about?
There's nothing that man did that protects women or children, and you don't have to be a pro-life activist to see that.
Kermit Gosnell is perhaps the most prolific serial killer in American history.
You better win.
So that was very impactful. I saw it twice
Oh, yeah.
last week. You've got to see it. As you can see, when you talk about the church not showing up, we had a judge in this case who didn't want to try it. Grand jury judge didn't want to present it, but she had to because of the facts of the matter, and we'll talk about that at another time. But then the grand jury was impaneled and did find him needing to be arrested. He was arrested. Doctors didn't want to come to court as a witness because they didn't want to touch it. You can see that the reporters didn't show up because they didn't want to touch it. Nobody wanted to touch this case.
Yeah.
And it was, as the DA says, this was the most prolific serial killer in the United States, really in our history. Thousands of babies.
Yeah.
And then a woman died and thousands of babies. And he ended up getting life in prison on 3 accounts, not thousands, but on 3 accounts because that's what they could find evidence for.
Yeah.
But seriously, if we continue to turn a blind eye to this kind of and even though this is not the most common way to perform abortion because the way Gosnell did it was so macabre,
right?
We still have people out there that are doing this very way in clinics all across the country, Dan.
And see, here's what is so sad. Why does it matter how? It's murder. Yeah. You know, we just have a brand new grandson. He was born, he's born like 12 days ago. Aww. Here's the amazing thing. 13 days ago, he could have been murdered and it wouldn't be murder. Now, 13 days later, if you kill him, it's murder. Now, how insane is that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously completely insane. I've argued that unless we just collapse as a culture, which I'm tending now to believe more of what's going to happen, but if we survive as a culture 100 years from today, we'll look back and say, how could that generation have been so callous? You know, we look back at the Nazi generation and we say, how could they have allowed that? because it's obvious to us how evil that was. And I think if we survive as a culture, we're going to look back and we're going to say, how could we have allowed that?
Right.
But we do. And as you say,
to our shame.
Well, and it's the crime that no one wants to talk about.
Yep.
Because it's a politically correct crime.
It's
and no one wants
politically
to talk about
corrupt.
It. Well, I know.
Crime.
I know.
Yeah.
But we don't want to talk about it because, well, you know, even the arguably one of the most conservative Supreme Court justices in our history, Antonin Scalia, argues that certain phrases and doctrines in the Constitution that aren't there have to be pretended as though they are there to protect the institution of the court. So the whole idea of reversing a decision like Roe v. Wade is anathema to so many people because it's admitting that the court is not infallible.
Right.
Of course, now I could state lots of cases like, Dred Scott.
Yeah.
I believe they were wrong there.
I think the court's been fallible.
Plessy versus Ferguson, where it actually made constitutional segregation.
Yeah.
See, nobody ever quotes that. Now, they're yelling, in the Kavanaugh hearings right now, follow case law. Okay, you mean Plessy versus Ferguson?
Right.
Oh, well, of course, no.
No.
So see, they're selective on which case law they want to follow, which is, of course, one of our problems, the whole idea of case law. No. You don't follow. Yeah, you don't follow case law.
No, you follow law.
That's right. You go back to the founding documents.
Right. Did you watch it when I was so impressed with Senator Graham? I'm generally not impressed with Senator Lindsey Graham. I think he has been a joke over the
Amnesty Graham.
Well, he's one of the the Gang of Eight. But however, his line of questioning with Kavanaugh in regards to Roe v. Wade. Did you watch that?
No, I didn't get to see it, but I've heard them.
It was really important. He said things like, where in the Constitution does it address abortion? And he couldn't answer that. But he always went back, Kavanaugh is a very clever jurist.
Yeah,
he went back to the, as Scalia stated, I can't even remember, the liberty of whatever it's called.
Well, yeah, and they're following stare decisis. We don't want to mess up case law.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
crazy things are happening. So, I also wanted to talk about what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Since the campaign.
Yeah.
Tell me about what this.
Well, first of all, there's life after the campaign. That's wonderful.
Yay!
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm doing is what I've always been doing, which is pastoring.
Right,
I'm pastor of Liberty Church.
Right.
I've been a pastor vocationally now since I was 23 as a senior pastor and 22 as a staff member. And I'm 59, so, 37 years.
Your life, your whole adult
life.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm still pastoring, but then I'm also doing something that I been doing for about 10 years, and it's traveling around doing a presentation. It's kind of like a one-man Broadway production.
Right.
It's about the preachers of the War of Independence called the Black Robed Regiment. And that's a title the British gave to the preachers.
Right.
And in period costume, I become some of these guys on stage, and it's multimedia. It's a pretty neat presentation.
It is. I've seen it several times.
Yeah,
it's
so
really
so I travel around the country telling the story that there was a time in America when the church was the tip of the spear. We actually led out in fighting for what's right. Yeah. Now, today, the church is the caboose. We're
last
just,
thought.
Yeah, that's exactly. We're not in the front at all. So I'm doing that still, and then I'm part of a movement that hopefully will get major funding so we can do some big things called Free the States.
Now talk about that, because we saw that come up during the campaign somewhat here and there. They had some really great ads.
Yeah, they did.
And they're fundraising, and they're really trying to express this state sovereignty idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there were some folks who early on were a part of my campaign who decided to pull out of the campaign and create a PAC.
Yeah.
And raise money to promote the ideas that I was running on.
Yeah.
And because of...
So it would live on.
Yeah, and because of the way the laws are written in campaign laws, they couldn't remain a part of my campaign.
Sure.
So they completely separated, and we said goodbye, and really had nothing else to do with them until after the primary was over.
Yeah.
But now that the primary is over and the dust has settled and the smoke is cleared, I am at least... as a figurehead, I'm working with this group, Free the States, because what they are wanting to do is to bring awareness to the fact that the original intent of the framers and founders was sovereign states that voluntarily came together as a union for mutual benefit and defense, but they never intended to surrender their sovereignty or to sign some kind of suicide pact.
Right.
Yeah, so we're not advocating anything other than just reasserting the rights that are still there.
Right. No civil disobedience or discourse.
Well, if it is civil disobedience, it will be peaceful, like the civil rights movement under Dr. Martin Luther King.
Do you guys stand with any of the groups that do the interposition? Do you do any of that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. We would encourage any state to take its rightful powers to protect its own people.
Mm-hmm.
See, the real debate here is, are we just one monolithic nation governed by Washington, D.C., so one size fits all, or are we 50 sovereign states that compacted together called a union, or these United States, with certain limited powers delegated to the federal government? And that's the debate. Now, unfortunately, most people, at least subconsciously, believe we're this monolith, that everything's decided in Washington and then it's force-fed to all of us. And unfortunately, Washington, as you know, is controlled by the money and in many instances, and in many instances by the progressive left, statist, almost fascist socialists.
Sure.
And so what they do is, since they can't win at the ballot box, they use the courts to force their will on those who don't agree.
Which was why this Kavanaugh hearing has turned into such a circus.
No, exactly right. Yeah. Exactly, because they know that at least philosophically he doesn't agree with that.
Right.
Now, he's untried. We'd have to see. Sometimes these justices flop on us as they flip on us.
When will the people decide that remember when I said that unbalanced three branches? When will the people decide though? Because if we were ever able to vote like a national referendum on whether or not abortion, it would have never gotten close.
Or defining marriage.
It would have never been close. So when do the people get mad enough, Dan?
Yeah, well, in the Declaration, and see, I quote more from the Declaration of Independence than I do the Constitution. Because the Declaration has all the founding principles.
Right.
The Constitution is just a way to govern, and it's been altered and changed so much that it's not even the original Constitution. Having said that, in the Declaration, Jefferson and his committee of 5, of course 4 others besides himself, said that there are remedies. If the government ceases to abide by the consent of the governed, then the people have the right and the duty to alter it. Of course, that means to change it. To abolish it, that means start with a clean slate and redesign it. Or if they've waited too long, throw it off, which means it's become a tyranny.
Yeah.
And I would argue that we're operating under some versions of soft tyranny right now.
Right.
Yeah, because the founders would have never envisioned an IRS that's actually the Gestapo of Washington.
Bureaucracy.
And they threaten you.
Oligarchs.
Well, they can come in and freeze your assets and take your property before you've been proven guilty, and then you go bankrupt or whatever, and then they find out later on you're not guilty. Well, they've ruined your life.
Yeah.
And they don't owe you penalties or interest, but you owe them. Yeah, so we'll see. That's tyranny.
Right.
Now we've grown up under it, so there are young people and even millennials who don't even recognize that as tyranny because it's all they've ever known.
No, true.
Yeah, so we're under the control of the feds.
Donald Trump.
Well, he does.
That's a miracle that we have that happening right now because he is going after that bureaucracy, that oligarchy, deep state, shadow government, cabal, whatever you want to call it. This is the first time in our history that someone has been this stalwart.
Certainly in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And of course you see what they're doing. They're unleashing the media. They're unleashing the big money with people like Soros and others.
Yeah. Tom Steiner.
Yeah,
millions of dollars.
But the so far Trump has stood by his guns, and I'm hoping that he does. I'm hoping he sticks with it.
Yeah, me too. How can people find the Black Robe Regiment if you wanted to hear more about it?
Well, the easiest way is just Dan Fisher, BRR, BlackRobeRegiment.com.
Okay. Yeah.
That's our website. It's not a really sophisticated website. In fact, we kind of let it go to seed while I was running for governor.
Well, you were busy for a minute.
Like for 15 months. And so we need to go in there and do a lot of stuff to it. But they can find enough stuff there to find out who were. I've written a book, by the way. I didn't even bring one with me, but I spent 2 years researching the history because I didn't want a book of anecdotes.
Right.
And so this thing has over 100 sources in the bibliography. It's over 600 footnotes.
Wow.
So it's a documented history of these guys. And it brings to mind a time in America when we actually stood up and said no.
Wow. That is cool. So do we have the promo where we could run his promo for Black Robe Regiment? That would be really cool.
Yeah, this is the promo for the DVD. We hired a movie company to make us, it's like a docudrama. Mm-hmm. And so what they're going to see is just a little promo of that. Yeah.
There was a time in America when the church engaged the culture. The patriot preachers of the 18th century spoke out boldly against tyranny and in defense of liberty, both social and spiritual.
Every Sunday, they preached these principles in their congregations wearing their black robes. And when the time came, many of those pastors led the men of those congregations off to fight for and some to die for those very principles. This is the story of some of those patriot preachers, men the British called the Black Robed Regiment.
My name is Dan Fisher, and as a leader in the modern-day black-robed regiment, I have a passion to see the pulpits in America once again aflame with the fires of righteousness, as Alexis de Tocqueville said they were early in our history, in bringing back the black-robed regiment. I use period costuming, actual relics from the War of Independence, and multimedia to bring to life some of these pastors so they can tell their amazing story. But this presentation is more than a trip back to the Revolution period. It's a clarion call to today's church. The stand of the 18th century church has relevance for us today. I'm convinced that the way they responded to their crisis can help us better understand how we can respond to the challenges we face today. If we believers here in the 21st century are not willing to stand like our 18th century ancestors stood, well, we could very well lose the freedoms that they won for us by their own sacrifice so many years ago in the War of Independence. This is why you won't want to miss this exciting presentation. I invite you to come and experience a time when the American church actually stood for what it believed. Your freedom, the freedom of your children and your grandchildren, could very well depend on what the church does today.
Wow, Dan, I've seen the live presentation and I love it. And I want to encourage you guys to not only go on danfisherbrr.com to possibly order the DVD, but also contact him to bring to your church or to your group, to your social group within your community. It's very important we all hear it.
We've done this presentation all over the area. We've got some that we're working on, but they're a ways off, like in Idaho.
Oh yeah. Oh, you travel
the state of Washington, and oh yeah, we've done it. We've done it all the way from Boston to Montana. We've never been further west than Montana.
Wow. Well, you can't get into California. What's going on?
Well, they're a little goosey over there.
Aren't they though? Well, Dan, I really have appreciated you coming in today.
Oh, it's always a privilege to visit with you, Brooke.
We pray for the future of babies in Oklahoma for sure, but also the hearts and minds of people.
Yeah.
Because really, I know we're Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, but we also care about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness here.
And let me say to you that I appreciate you guys so much for what you did in that effort alone. Thank you. And you know that I stood with you. I was one of the only ones that did.
Wonderful. He signed not only our pledge right here on the wall, but he also signed our petition to roll back those unnecessary and burdensome taxes.
And in forums said it.
Yeah, I know.
And the other guys wouldn't.
They wouldn't.
Oh no,
they still won't.
they're scared of their own shadow.
They're very scared of that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the one thing. Maybe in closing my part of this program is I want to encourage the people. go beyond party titles and political slogans and catchphrases.
Sure.
Because we have now elected a lot of Republicans in our state government. They may be Republicans, but they're not conservatives.
No.
And if we don't start taking back the principles,
right,
we're going to get to the place, if we haven't already reached it, where Republican means nothing.
Yeah, I think we're there.
It just means nothing. Yeah. And so if the people don't go beyond that,
I know,
we're in for a rocky ride here in Oklahoma.
I think we are anyway. But even though I still encourage you on November 6th, as I started out the show today, to be sure to vote red in November.
Yeah.
There is no other choice, you guys. It may be rhinos that you're voting for, but we have to protect our president at all costs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So I'll be in D.C. tomorrow with Rhonda this week. We're going up there for the Jim Jordan rally as well as the Kavanaugh garbage, and we're going to go to the White House and stuff. So stay tuned, you guys, because OTU Media, Rhonda and Brooke, Sugar and Spice will be coming at you live from the D.C. Mall. See you later, guys. Thanks for topping in.
There was a time in America when the church engaged the culture. The patriot preachers of the 18th century spoke out boldly against tyranny and in defense of liberty, both social and spiritual. Every Sunday, they preached these principles in their congregations wearing their black robes. And when the time came, many of those pastors led the men of those congregations off to fight for and some to die for those very principles. This is the story of some of those patriot preachers, men the British called the Black Robed Regiment. My name is Dan Fisher, and as a leader in the modern-day Black Robed Regiment, I have a passion to see the pulpits in America once again aflame with the fires of righteousness, as Alexis de Tocqueville said they were early in our history in bringing back the Black Robed Regiment. I use period costuming, actual relics from the War of Independence, and multimedia to bring to life some of these pastors so they can tell their amazing story. But this presentation is more than a trip back to the Revolution period. It's a clarion call to today's church. The stand of the 18th century church has relevance for us today. I'm convinced that the way they responded to their crisis can help us better understand how we can respond to the challenges we face today. If we believers here in the 21st century are not willing to stand like our 18th century ancestors stood, we could very well lose the freedoms that they won for us by their own sacrifice so many years ago in the War of Independence. This is why you won't want to miss this exciting presentation. I invite you to come and experience a time when the American church actually stood for what it believed. Your freedom, the freedom of your children and your grandchildren, could very well depend on what the church does today.